Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to class. My name is Timi Olajide Arishe, and I'm your facilitator for MBA 817, and that's Environment of Business. Okay, so basically, we are in lesson 4, and the topic for today is ethics and social responsibility. So basically the topics to be covered, for today includes ethics. We're going to talk about what ethics is all about. We're going to talk about what social responsibility is. And lastly, we'll talk about how to manage social responsibility. And at the end of this lesson, you should be able to discuss the term ethics. You should be able to describe social responsibility, and you should be able to explain the concept of managing social responsibility. So basically, what do we understand by ethics? We have so many definitions, and I know each and every one of you would have your own little understanding of what ethics is all about. But in layman's term, we say ethics is an individual's or personal belief about somebody's behavior, actions, or decisions, if it's right or wrong. So basically, ethics is something that one believes in, and the belief of that person, tilts towards if it's right or wrong. So basically, we have various examples. For instance, in organizations or in professions, we have what we call ethical practices or ethical standards or ethical codes. For instance, in the medical field, they have their ethical practices. You cannot disclose somebody's ailments to someone else that is not related to that person. So it's unethical for you as a doctor to disclose somebody's ailment to someone else. So that's something that, it's peculiar in the medical, in the medical industry. And also in various organizations, they also have their ethics, and I know that a lot of you in your organizations, you have your ethics, and you know what they stand for. So basically ethics is just, one's belief, and one's personal behavior, which can, be tilted towards right or wrong. So when it's unethical, it's wrong, and when it's ethical, that means it's right. So having said all that, I know you guys would have been able to understand what ethics is all about and how you can apply it to your daily lives and basically to your organizations. And we move on to areas of managerial ethics. And what do we understand by areas of managerial ethics? These are basically the way managers, need to actually, how would I put it? These are the ways managers, would manage, the ethical standards of behavior, of individuals in their organization. So basically, that's what managerial ethics is all about. And the following are areas of managerial ethics: how an organization treats its employees. Basically, how do organization treats its employees? And when we talk about ethics in this context, is saying that, organizations should treat their employees with respect. Yes, for every organization, you need to treat, the lowest cadre of your staff with respect. You don't need to actually treat them based on, because you're a security man or because you're a junior staff and, the manager treats you or talks to you anyhow. That is very unethical. Everyone should be given respect in any organization, irrespective of their position. In Nigeria, I think what we mostly do is give respect to elderly people. We just feel, oh, they are so elderly. Yes, no, it doesn't, always work that way. Even the younger people also should be given respect to, and that's something that a lot of organizations do not practice properly. So employers should actually treat their employees with a lot of with a lot of respect. And also, you don't. Another thing that is very unethical, or what managers, or top management needs to, try as much as possible to be ethical about is, overloading or overworking your employees. Yes, it's very unethical. For instance, you give them a time and you say, oh, their resumption is 9 a.m. and their closing is 9 p.m. and I'm sorry, 5 p.m. And at the end of the day, most of them stay as late as 10 p.m. That's very unethical. It's you are overworking and overloading them. And at the end of the day, it might not yield, to the productivity of that organization. So organizations should actually should actually find a way, a way. And even if you are going to allow them work, why don't you pay them overtime, like part to, reimburse them for doing that. Don't just say, oh, because you are paying them monthly salary, therefore they need to slave for the organization. No, add a little bit of incentive into it so that they know that, my effort or whatever I'm putting into this organization is not being fruitless. So basically, the areas, of managerial ethics in this aspect we just talked about on how organization treats its employees. So we move on to how employees treat the organization. And this is actually talking about how employees, how they actually treat, the organizations. It's very unethical when you have employees that steal from the organization. Even as little as a stapler, you will find some people taking it home. It is very unethical. Every property of the organization should be for the organization and not for your home use. Yes, it's very unethical. Also, some confidentiality, some things that are confidential, especially, documents and the rest of it. If you work in HR department, you don't need to start disclosing information about companies to their competitors. It's very unethical, So these are the ways. And also we have a lot of employees also that, would come late to work. It's very unethical. It's not a good practice, for employees to do that to the organization. Then we move to how employees and the organization treat other economic agents. Yeah, so how do employees and organization, maybe for instance, treat the third party, maybe consultants or, suppliers or, or the third party that, help them towards the success of this their organization. How do they treat them? You understand? So these are also things, because at the end of the day, if they are not being treated well, obviously they would not feel compelled, to do anything for that organization anymore. So it's very unethical if employees and organizations in return do not treat their third-party agent properly. So yes, that's it for ethics. And we move on to the next slide. Next slide, we are talking about social responsibility. Which I will say social responsibility has to do with taking up responsibility, provide either facilities or support its immediate environment, where his organization is actually situated. So basically, I know a lot of us have heard of what social responsibility, normally we call it corporate social responsibility. Yes. So it's basically, from the definition we have here, it says it's the set of saying here that corporate social responsibility is actually has to do with organizations, to protect and enhance the society in which, the organizations may be considered responsible to their stakeholders, natural environment, and to the general social welfare. So basically, it's just about taking care of your host community, basically where your organization is situated, and we see this on a daily basis. We hear about it. For instance, when you have organization We can use the example of the oil and gas industry with the likes of Shell, Chevron, Mobil that have their offices in riverine areas, the South, you know what, they do, to these indigents. Most of those indigents are being employed, most of what they do, they actually give back to the society, building roads, building schools, infrastructure facility, boreholes, and the rest of it. So it's basically giving back, to the society, or giving back to, your host community where your organizations is being situated in. So we have areas of social responsibility. And so we have different areas, in which, the organization may actually exercise their social responsibility. We have towards natural environment. So basically, they might tend to make sure that they clean up every pollution, that has been caused, that has been caused by the organization. They try as much as possible to clean them up. And, they also, towards the general well-being of that community also, like I said, maybe by making boreholes, schools, and everything that will make them comfortable and not feel that they've been cheated off, they've been cheated off, how would I put it? They've been cheated off in their host community. So basically, that's what areas of social responsibility in which organizations need to look at. Then we move on to argument for and against social responsibility. So basically, it's been said that some people have argued against social responsibility, and why some people have argued for social responsibility. So we'll be looking at these two statements. So the first one we'll be looking at is argument for social responsibility. So a lot of people, have actually said that, corporate social responsibility is something every organization needs to actually put into consideration. Yes, every organization needs to put corporate social responsibility into consideration. So you can't just be in a place and you are making profit and you are not actually looking out for that particular community or the people, in that community. You need to look into inwards to see what they want or what you need to do, to be able to help that particular community where the organization is actually situated in. So a lot of people have argued for more organizations to continue, to advocate for social responsibility, in their community. Another one is the argument against social responsibility. A lot of people also have already argued against social responsibility in respect to saying that the people in that community will be so dependent on the organization for so many things. For instance, when we talk about things like this, we can use examples in the Niger Delta, where we had the Niger Delta militants, irrespective of what all these oil companies, the likes of Shell, Chevron have done for them, they still felt cheated, and felt that they were entitled to. And, most people said, oh, that if these people hadn't done what they did, at the end of the day, they don't think that these militants, would have started troubling them, so to say. So a lot of argument against social responsibility has also emerged. And they said some of these people also rob them off tax paying. They feel that, okay, if we do this thing, the government will be able to that's our tax payment and some of all those things. So they said, you know what, don't even bother. Let whoever needs to do those things do it, especially if it's government's maintenance scheme. They need to do it themselves, so that these people don't feel that because we've done it, then we don't need to do something else. So basically, that's for social responsibility. And we move on to organization approaches to social responsibility. Basically, we have 4 approaches, and we are going to be talking about these approaches. We're going to be talking about the approaches So the first approach is called the obstructionism stance. And this, just a moment, please. Mm. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a while now. I just needed to get something out so that I can explain better. Okay, so like I earlier said, I said we are going to be talking about the approaches to organizational approaches to social responsibility. So I said the first one we'll be talking about is the obstructionism stance. And this is actually a way whereby social responsibility it's it's done minimally. You understand? It's not being it's not so pronounced. The organization doesn't do too much; they just do little. That's the obstructionism stance. That's what it means. And the organization does not make anything so elaborate. They just do a little, for that host community where the organization is situated. So in terms of it, they can just maybe, for instance, just commission like a borehole or something. They don't do something that is so much per se, for that particular community. So that's what the obstructionist stance actually means. And we move on to the defensive stance. And this one is actually saying that, that the organization does everything that is required of it legally, but nothing more. This approach is more consistent with the arguments used against social responsibility just described. So this defensive stance is saying that, the organization actually, does everything that is required by them. For instance, now by law, if he's saying that, you need to do so and so, A, B, and C, for the community, they just stick to that. They don't do anything extra, for the defensive stance. They don't do anything extra at all. So legally, by law, they just do what they need to do for that particular, community. So if it's being stipulated, maybe by law, maybe the community elder will say, okay, for the fact that your organization is here, these are the things that you need to do. This is our law. And they say, okay, fine, it is it. But they will not do anything extra, anything contrary, to whatever the laws that have been given them. So that's the defensive stance. Then we move on to the accommodative stance. And this one is saying that that such organizations, what they do, they voluntarily agree to participate in social programs. These ones, they accommodate everything, that is being given to them. So these ones, they adopt an accommodative stance. They meet its legal and ethical obligations and also go beyond this requirement in selected cases. So for this accommodative stance, they go a little extra out of their way to do more, for the host community, wherever the organization is being situated in. That's for the accommodative stance. So if you go to your course materials, you have various examples that have been, given, various examples that have been stated there. Then we move on to the proactive stance. And basically, this one is saying that, these ones, when you say someone is proactive, you know what it is. The person, before you even say, the person has done, gone ahead of you with 3 or 4 steps. Yes, that's what the proactive stance is all about. So basically, this is what, the organization does. They go out of their way. Before you say ABC, they've done G, E, F, and so this is what some organizations do. They are very proactive when it comes to things concerning social responsibility. And so I think we've come to the end of that organizational approach, to organizational approach to social responsibility. So if you check our slides, you see that we are done with we've talked about, the 4 approaches, and then we move on to how government influences social responsibility. So I know there are different ways in which the government attempts to shape social responsibility practices, and it can be through direct and indirect channels. And so if we move on to that, the government can actually influence, social responsibility through direct regulation. Yes, when we talk about direct regulation, it's something, that they would have actually stipulated, or they would have actually imbibed in the Constitution. Okay, for instance, Shell, Chevron, and the rest of it. We have a situation whereby the PIB bill has actually been passed, and basically it's to favor, the host community where all these oil companies are actually situated in. So, these are direct regulations that, it's under the Constitution. And then, for instance, we have the Environmental Protection Agency, to handle environmental issues, So these are what the agencies will do. These people will go around to make sure that the places where these organizations are not polluted, are not, giving the indigenes their issues, like contaminated water and the rest of it. So even if anything like that happens, that organization is expected to do something about it. So these are direct regulation, because this the Environmental Protection Agency would actually report back to the government to give them their own feedback to say this is what we've seen and this is what they need to do. So the government will call on the attentions of those organizations, to actually do something, concerning those pollution. So these are direct regulations. These are things, that the government and legislations, would have to put into place, or that have put into place, for organizations to follow. Then we have indirect, regulation. And for the indirect regulation, the government indirectly influences the social responsibility of the organization through its tax codes. In effect, the government can influence how organizations spend their social responsibility, by providing greater or lesser tax incentive. So this is another way of which, the government actually influences, social responsibility. Then also we move on to how organizations influence the government. So basically, we have 4 methods of, how organizations influence government. And number 1 is personal contact. And this is something we are aware. When you have people in high places, you call it connects, you understand, you can have a personal contact with a government official, and you can influence things, to suit your organization. Yes. So for instance, now you have the likes of Dangote and you see what they do. Yes, these are people that place the higher mindset. So they can actually influence the way, things are being done, to be able to suit their organization. So that's personal contact. So we have an example here, and they said a business executive, for example, will be able to contact a politician directly and present his or her case regarding a piece of legislation being considered. Yes, these are things, personal contact, especially when we have people in the House of Assembly and the rest of it that are friends. They can actually help you, to be able to actualize, any bill that, concerns your organization. Another one we have is lobbying, and we all know what lobbying is. It's actually maneuvering your way, to suit, whatever you want. Lobbying is, not going through the right channel, but maneuvering your way, manipulating things, bribing people and the rest of it to get things done for you. So that's another, form of organizations influencing, the social, influencing the government through social responsibility. Then we have political action committees, and we say here that companies themselves cannot legally make direct donations to political parties. So they influence the government through political action committee, Political Action Committee organization creates to solicit and distribute money to political candidates. So this is something that we see in Nigeria. This is not something that is being covered up. It's something that is glaring. You can find that some organizations will actually sponsor some political parties, so that at the end of the day, if those parties win, they will, support them, when it's time to pass bills or, make more bills and the rest of it. So that's how one of the ways, organizations actually influence the government. Another one we have here is favor. Yes, a lot of us, we pray for favor every day, unexpected, merited favor. That's what we say, that, favor should locate us. Yes, some people can actually be favored legally, in every area, whereby at the end of the day, they will just be favored that, the organizations, would influence whatever policies or whatever regulation that is being given by the government. So basically, yes, we've come to the end of that slide, and we move on to the next slide. And our next slide will be talking about managing social responsibility. Okay, so basically we have two dimensions. The first dimension we have is the formal organization dimension. So that's under managing social responsibility. So we'll be talking about the formal organization dimension. And it's been said here that formal organization dimension can help manage social responsibility. And there are three different ways, that the formal organization can help: through legal compliance, through ethical compliance, and lastly, through philanthropic giving. So legal compliance, it's basically assigned to the appropriate functional managers. For example, the organization's top human resource executive is responsible for ensuring compliance with regulations concerning hiring, pay, and workplace safety and health. So basically, that's what we call the legal compliance, So they would want to comply, to, a lot of social responsibilities, So it's kind of saying that legally, they're actually obeying the law to say that this is what they've asked you people to do and you are complying to those things. We also move on to ethical compliance, and like ethical, we talked about ethical and we say this is a standard of behavior, this is something that, we are conformed to your ethics, this is what you believe in, whether it's right or wrong here, that's your own belief. So ethical compliance has to do with the way you see things, and how you comply with those things as an organization. So that's what ethical compliance is all about. Then we talk about philanthropical giving. What we say, philanthropist, this is somebody that gives, freely, and basically to charities, charitable organizations, motherless babies, and all that stuff. So this is what we call philanthropical giving. So basically, these are the formal organizational dimension. So we have legal compliance, ethical compliance, and philanthropic giving. Then we move on to informal organization dimension. And for this one, we are going to be looking at organization leadership and culture. Looking at how the organization responds to whistleblowers, and lastly, we'll be looking at yes, so we'll be looking at those two majorly. Organizational leadership and culture. So what they're trying to say here is that leadership practices and organization culture can go a long way towards defining the social responsibility stance an organization and its members will adopt. Yes, so the organizational leadership would go a long way to see what the kind of social responsibility the organizations would adopt. So it goes a long way. There are some organizations, before setting out on this, they'll have series of meetings, with their employees to see how, they can actually come up with something that at the end of the day, the community would appreciate. So, that leadership, and practicing that kind of culture, will go a long way. Then talking about whistleblowing, we know what whistleblowing is. Is actually disclosure by employee of illegal or unethical conduct on the part of others within the organization. So how do employers actually try as much as possible to um, cover, whistleblowers? So we have in so many ways what, they do about, whistleblowers. So they say whistleblowers may have to proceed through a number of channels to be heard, and they may even get fired for their efforts. Yes, we've had situations whereby, some whistleblowers are, fired, and basically that means maybe sometimes they might not have an element of truth to their story. So you don't need to indict somebody when you don't have a concrete evidence, as to what that person has actually done. So basically, and for instance, if the person is actually saying the truth and has concrete evidence, yes, some of them are being compensated and protected by the organization. So basically, I think we've come to the end, of this facilitation. And then in summary, we have learned to know what ethics is all about, social responsibility and managing social responsibility. And say that if you have any question or if you need, to contact me, you can always send me an email the chat room, which holds every Wednesday. So it's bye for now for me, and all the best of luck. And like I will say, it's you don't need to start reading when exam comes. You should start, from today. Go through your course materials, go through, the recordings and all that, and further readings also to broaden your knowledge about this particular course. So please try as much as possible to stay safe, and I wish you all the best of luck. Bye for now. Take care.